The following day, Margaret found John and Linda in the garden. He was teaching her how to prune rose bushes. The sight of the two of them working side by side brought back a flood of memories for her. She recalled how she and David had spent their Saturdays pruning the very same rose bushes, how they had laughed when a thorn pricked her finger, how David had looked at her, his eyes shining with love. Turning away, Margaret walked to the patio where Michael and Grace were having coffee. The morning sun glinted off the glass, making it difficult for her to look directly at them. Grace, dressed elegantly in a flowing summer dress, stirred her coffee slowly. Michael, ruggedly handsome in his worn jeans and a t-shirt, stared intently at the dark liquid in his cup. She sat down heavily on a chair nearby, trying to steady her breathing. As she looked at them, Margaret felt a surge of protective love. This couple, so different yet united, reminded her of her own courtship. How she and David had been an unlikely pair too. People had whispered, gossiped, but their love had proven stronger than any doubt. Grace looked up, meeting Margaret's gaze. There was understanding in her eyes, a shared knowledge of how fragile happiness could be. "You called me here," Grace said softly. "I know," Margaret replied. "I wanted to tell you. You have my son's happiness in your hands. Don't waste it on pride or the gossip of others." Grace nodded slowly, taking a sip of her coffee. "I won't." Her voice was firm. A single tear rolled down Margaret's cheek. She wiped it away quickly, afraid they might see her weakness. But Grace saw it. "Mrs. Anderson, please," she said kindly. "I may not have known your husband, but I knew how much he loved you, how he cherished you. Your sons love you too, even if they can't show it properly. We all make mistakes, misunderstand each other, but it doesn't mean we don't care." Margaret nodded, grateful for Grace's understanding. Later that day, she sat with Michael and John again. They had gathered around the old oak tree in the backyard, its gnarled branches a silent witness to their brotherhood once. "I'm sorry," Michael said suddenly, looking away. John scoffed, but his eyes betrayed him. Margaret reached out, her touch gentle on Michael's arm. "We all are," she said softly. "But the important thing is, we have the chance to fix it, to repair the cracks before they become too wide." John stepped forward, his face etched with emotion. "What do you suggest? How can we fix this mess?" Margaret looked at them both, her gaze unwavering. "Let bygones be bygones. Start anew with an open heart and honest words. Be brothers again. Let Grace and Linda know that despite their differences, they are sisters-in-law bound by the love for you both. And let them know they have my love and trust." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the four of them embraced. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. Margaret knew the road ahead would be long and winding, but she also knew that love, like the old oak tree, had deep roots that could withstand any storm. The air hung heavy with tension, thick enough to choke on as John and Michael faced off in the living room. Margaret's pleas echoed in the silence, unanswered. John was the first to break the quiet. His voice, though low, held a sharpness that sliced through the remaining calm. "You asked for my opinion, Mother. That was then. Things change. We're not boys anymore." He paused, meeting her gaze directly. "I can't pretend this is a good match. No one would blame me if I walked out tonight." A muscle twitched in Michael's jaw, betraying his anger. Then he did the one thing he knew would enrage John. He clenched his fists and stood up, looming over his brother. "Some things shouldn't change, John. Loyalty shouldn't change." John scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Are you kidding me? You come here after 6 years, criticize my choices, question my loyalty, and now you lecture me about loyalty? What happened to always having each other's backs, Michael? What happened to family?" Michael narrowed his eyes, his tone dangerous. "You were the one who left, John. You abandoned this family, abandoned us." John threw his hands up in the air, frustration evident. "I did not abandon anyone. I went to serve my country. You know damn well there are orders we can't discuss, missions we can't talk about. It's called loyalty to a higher cause, something apparently you don't understand." "And what about loyalty to your own flesh and blood?" Michael shot back. "What about the vows we made as boys to stick together no matter what? To have each other's backs?" "We were kids," John said, his voice hardening. "We didn't know what we were promising. Besides, you weren't there. You left our little pact hanging. You chose to run off with Grace instead. I did not. Michael's eyes flashed with anger. She came to me. She needed my help. Our father was sick and Grace, she had nowhere else to turn. I couldn't just leave her to fend for herself. Oh, please, John sneered. You left because you were in love, just like father left mother. Men in this family have a great track record of abandoning women. Real noble, real high-minded talk. You sound like a soap opera, Michael. This is bigger than you and your silly feelings. You should have thought of that before you turned traitor. Michael recoiled as if struck. Traitor? That's rich, John. Coming from someone who spent 6 years in the service of another country. Someone who could have been court-martialed for desertion. Someone who could be charged with treason for selling out his own people. Don't you dare! John snarled, lunging at Michael, but Margaret screamed, throwing herself between them. Stop this, both of you. Can't you see? You're tearing apart everything your father worked for, everything I prayed for. But her pleas were lost in their anger, drowned out by the rising tide of their voices. John ripped his hand away from hers, his face ashen. Michael lowered his gaze, shaking his head, a single word escaping his lips. Fine. And with that, he strode out of the house, slamming the door behind him. When the shouting ceased, and her sons stormed off in opposite directions, Margaret sank into the armchair, her body trembling with exhaustion. Her hands gnarled with age clutched at the worn fabric of the chair, as she stared at the empty space between the two chairs where her sons had once sat side by side as boys, planning adventures, whispering secrets, laughing until their stomachs hurt. Now that space was filled with nothing but silence. Her tears fell quietly, landing on her folded hands as she whispered to herself, Lord, keep them safe. Even if they cannot see, even if they cannot listen to me, protect them. Don't let this house become a graveyard of love. But deep in her heart, Margaret knew something she had never admitted out loud. The sons she had once bound together with love were slipping further and further apart, and nothing she said seemed strong enough to hold them. A single red rose. Its velvety petals were a stark contrast to the cruel lines etched on its receiver's face. Margaret's hands trembled as she took it, her gaze dropping to the accompanying note. To the woman who still holds my heart. Even if I can't be with you, know that a part of me will always love you. Forever yours, Michael. She clutched the rose, burying her face in its fragrance. The scent of roses had been Michael's favorite. Her, Michael. How could it be? The letter was written in John's handwriting. Her elder son, the golden child, the one who never caused a ripple out of place. The thought of him harboring such feelings, letting them fester for so long, broke her heart. The tension that had been building in the Anderson household finally snapped one stormy Friday night. What began as another bitter exchange between Linda and Grace spiraled into a battle that no one could stop. The two women faced each other in Margaret's dining room, their voices rising like fire alarms. You've poisoned this family with your greed, Grace cried, her face pale but her words sharp. All you care about is shopping bags and status symbols. You've turned John into someone he's not. Linda laughed bitterly, tossing her hair back. At least I push him to be more than a small-town nobody. Unlike you, who drags Michael down into mediocrity. No ambition, no class, just clinging to his mother's apron strings. Michael slammed his fist on the table. Don't you dare talk about my mother. John shot up from his chair, his eyes blazing. And don't you dare insult my wife. For the first time in their lives, the brothers stood not shoulder to shoulder, but directly against each other. Margaret's desperate pleas fell flat as her sons' voices thundered louder than hers. That night, Linda cornered John in their bedroom. Her voice was low, persuasive, poisonous. It's time to cut ties, John. If Michael wants to cling to his mother and that fragile wife of his, let him. We don't need them. Finalize the real estate deal without him. Claim your future. Your father would have wanted you to lead, not follow. John hesitated, guilt flickering in his eyes. But Linda's hand on his arm, her lips whispering promises of power and wealth, blurred his doubts. By dawn, his mind was set. Across town, Grace sat with Michael, her hands trembling as she held the inheritance papers. They only want the money, she whispered. They don't care about family or dignity. If you don't fight this, You'll lose everything your father built, and your mother's respect. Michael's heart ached, torn between the love for his brother and the duty to his family's legacy. But as Grace wept in his arms, something hardened inside him. By morning, he called a lawyer. 2 days later, a courier arrived at Margaret's doorstep, delivering the unthinkable: a single red rose. Its velvety petals were a stark contrast to the cruel lines etched on its receiver's face. Margaret's hands trembled as she took it, her gaze dropping to the accompanying note. To the woman who still holds my heart, even if I can't be with you, know that a part of me will always love you. Forever yours, Michael. She clutched the rose, burying her face in its fragrance. The scent of roses had been Michael's favorite. Michael. How could it be? The letter was written in John's handwriting, her elder son, the golden child, the one who never caused a ripple out of place. The thought of him harboring such feelings, letting them fester for so long, broke her heart. The rose wilted in her grasp, mirroring the state of her soul. She was caught in a tempest of emotions, the kind that threatened to drown her. But amidst the wreckage of her shattered dreams, a fierce determination bloomed. That evening, Margaret summoned her sons. When they entered, heads held high, she was seated at the dining table, Grace by her side. In her hand was a stack of papers. "I thought you should see this," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Perhaps it will give you clarity on what truly matters." John recoiled as if burned, his eyes pleading with his mother. Michael, however, stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. As he took the papers, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. "The Anderson Family Trust," he read aloud, his voice echoing in the silent room. "It states clearly that in the event of any dispute over the estate, the family must come to a consensus. And here," he looked up, his eyes meeting Margaret's, "it states the ultimate decision rests with our mother." Margaret nodded, her grip tightening on the papers. "My decision is unanimous," she declared, her voice ringing with newfound strength. "We are a family, and we will face whatever challenges come our way together." John opened his mouth to protest, but Linda silenced him with a look. Michael, his face hardening, stepped in front of his mother, shielding her like the dutiful son she had raised. The room crackled with tension, the unspoken question hanging heavy in the air. Who would stand with whom? As the seconds ticked by, the fate of the Andersons, their family and their fortune hung in the balance, waiting for the dominoes to fall. In the wake of their father's passing, the once unbreakable bond between brothers John and Michael snapped under the weight of an inheritance. But it wasn't money or property that caused the rift, but something far more potent. A love letter from their late father to a woman named Grace, revealing a secret marriage. John, a man of unwavering principles, couldn't fathom why their father would conceal such a significant part of his life. Michael, ever the pragmatist, saw only the legal complications of a secret marriage, especially after their father's untimely demise. The revelation cast long shadows over their carefully constructed lives, forcing them to confront a past they never knew. But it was their wives, Linda and Margaret, who bore the brunt of the revelation's impact. Linda, fiercely protective of her marriage and harboring a deep resentment towards Grace, accused her of orchestrating their father's decision to keep the marriage a secret. Margaret, bound by duty and tradition, saw the union as a threat to the sanctity of their family. She clung to their father's memory as a pillar of faith and righteousness, and she couldn't reconcile the image with his actions. The brothers found themselves at a crossroads, torn between honoring their father's wishes and confronting the lies that had defined their family for years. As the weight of their father's hidden life pressed down on them, they were forced to confront a harsh reality. Their father had kept secrets, not just about his marriage, but about his entire life. He'd crafted a narrative that he'd been a widower, living a pure and pious life in service to God, and the brothers, along with everyone else, had played their parts perfectly. But now the illusion was shattered, leaving them to pick up the pieces of a life built on deception. The lawyer cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping over the stunned faces of the family. "As Mr. Thomas's lawyer, it is my duty to inform you that any decisions made regarding the will need to be unanimous. If one person refuses to sign, then the will becomes null and void." leaving the estate to be divided equally among all heirs. A tense silence descended on the room, broken only by the grandfather clock's rhythmic chime. Suddenly, Linda, unable to contain her anger any longer, exploded. "This is nonsense!" she spat, her voice ringing with indignation. She abruptly pushed back her chair, the sound of scraping metal echoing her turmoil. "Your father is gone, and you're letting some outdated piece of paper dictate your life? John, don't you see? This is Grace's doing. She's brainwashed you all to do her bidding. This has nothing to do with your father's final wishes. It's all about controlling this family and its resources." Her words hung in the air, sharp and accusatory, before Grace finally snapped. She shot up, her eyes blazing with righteous anger. Despite her voice trembling with suppressed emotion, her words cut like shards of glass. "How dare you accuse me of brainwashing your husband? You are the one who has been poisoning him against me since we arrived. My marriage to John's father is a testament to our enduring love, a love that you and your ilk can never comprehend." "Enough!" boomed a voice, and all eyes turned to the lawyer, who continued. "This is not the time or place for recriminations. We are here to settle the affairs of a man who loved deeply and whose final wishes should be respected. The marriage may have been kept secret, but it was real, and his children deserve to know the truth about their heritage." The brothers exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of their father's hidden life pressing heavily on them. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice betraying his inner turmoil. "What do you suggest we do?" The lawyer's gaze was steady. "Honor his memory. Sign the papers establishing Grace as your sister and allowing her to take her rightful place in this family." As the pen moved across the paper, sealing their father's marriage and acknowledging his hidden daughter, a profound sense of loss washed over them. They had lost not just a father, but a part of their own narrative, a story rewritten by love, secrecy, and the relentless march of time. Its words glowing in their minds like a curse, its ink heavy with blood. It wasn't just a will anymore. It was a battlefield. And in that cursed silence, the house itself seemed to shift. The walls groaned softly, the old wood whispering secrets only the dead could hear. To Margaret, it was almost as if David's voice echoed through the halls. "Family divided will destroy itself." The words hung in the air, chilling and final. And so the Anderson family stood at the edge of ruin. Two brothers torn between love and pride, two wives locked in battle, and a mother whose tears could no longer heal the wounds. When John read the last words of David's will, a deathly hush fell over the room. It was as if David, even in death, had laid down a challenge, his spirit lingering in the house, daring them to defy him. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows like a restless spirit. Inside, though, the storm was in the eyes of the Andersons. John, his face pale and drawn, felt the weight of the inheritance pressing down on him. Not just in terms of money, but of responsibility. How could he, a man who valued freedom above all, be tethered to such burdens? Then he looked at Thomas, his brother's face a mask of hurt and betrayal. Was this the legacy their father had planned? A rift between them, a fractured family. And then there were the women. Martha, her chin raised in haughty triumph, had scored a victory, or so she thought, but standing beside her, Margaret felt only a deep, aching sadness. What had been gained and at what cost? The house, once a symbol of family unity, now felt like a prison of memories, each room echoing with the laughter of children who would never run through those halls again. As they filed out of the office, the silence was deafening. In that heavy quiet, accusations hung in the air. In the drawing room, where so many Christmases had been celebrated, Martha finally broke the silence. Her voice, sharp as a shard of glass, cut through the tense air. "So, the black sheep gets everything. How very fair." Her eyes, cold and hard, glinted with resentment. "Everything!" She spat out the word like a curse. Margaret couldn't take it anymore. She stepped forward, her voice trembling with suppressed anger. "And what do you know?" she demanded, her eyes flashing. "You, who schemed and plotted in the shadows, you deserve nothing." "Oh, really?" Martha sneered, rising from her chair. "And what makes you think you deserve it all, Margaret?" "I deserve it because—" Margaret paused, searching for the right words. "We were closer. We were a team. Martha, you were never one of us. That is rich, no doubt, Martha retorted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Coming from the woman who spilled my brother's darkest secrets to that wretched lawyer. I did not, Margaret exclaimed, outraged. You twisted the truth to your advantage. And now you have the audacity to blame me? Their argument escalated, each woman accusing the other of stealing, cheating, and lying. But amidst the chaos, Margaret spotted a flicker of fear in Martha's eyes. It was subtle, like a shadow passing over the moon, but Margaret caught it. Martha, for all her bravado, was afraid. Afraid of losing control, afraid of being exposed. With a surge of triumph, Margaret pressed her attack. Why are you so afraid, Martha? Afraid of what? Martha recoiled as if struck, her carefully constructed facade crumbling just a bit. I am not afraid, she hissed, her voice betraying her. But in that moment, Margaret knew she had struck a nerve. As the women continued to battle, their words like weapons of mass destruction, John and Thomas stood frozen in the center of the maelstrom. They wanted to intervene, to stop the verbal onslaught, but something held them back. Perhaps they were stunned by the ferocity of the storm, or maybe they were just plain scared. David's parting gift to his sons was a house divided, not just in terms of property, but in terms of family. His legacy was now a battleground where every room, every object was a pawn in the game of familial betrayal. The once warm and inviting rooms of the Anderson house now felt like the battleground of Armageddon. On the edge of a cliff, the wind whipping her hair around her face, stood a woman, teary-eyed. Her name was Martha Anderson, a matriarch whose family was on the brink of destruction. Below her, the ocean roared, a metaphor for the turmoil in her heart. She had always prided herself on her intuition, her ability to feel the emotional temperature of her family's relationships. But she had missed this one, the brewing storm between her sons. It started subtly, a shift in energy, a change in the way Michael and David looked at each other. At first, Martha had dismissed it. Her boys were grown men with their own lives. It was normal for them to drift apart. Then the distance became a chasm, filled by resentment and unspoken words. She had tried to bridge it, to bring them together, but the effort only intensified their animosity. And then came the day when all pretense was dropped. The brothers had gotten into a massive fight, their voices echoing with anger and betrayal. "I'll disinherit you!" Michael had screamed, his face contorted with rage. And those words, like a boomerang, had come back to haunt him. Martha had managed to calm Michael down, but David had left, slamming the door behind him. He hadn't been seen since. Martha knew that if she didn't do something, her family would shatter. She went to see Michael, who was sitting alone in his study, the room heavy with his brooding silence. "You have to let go of your pride, Michael," Martha said, her voice shaking. "Your brother is hurting. You need to talk to him." Michael looked up, his eyes filled with pain. "How can I? He's the one who insulted me, who threatened me." "Enough," Martha said, her voice rising. "I am your mother. I know both of you. You were both wrong. You both need to apologize." Michael shook his head, his jaw set firmly. "I won't apologize. He started it." "Then you're no better than your father," Martha whispered, the hurt evident in her voice. "He also had a tongue as sharp as a knife, but he never learned to temper it with kindness. Don't be like him, Michael." Her words hit their mark. Michael's shoulders slumped. He knew his father had been a tyrant, his harsh words leaving deep scars on everyone. He didn't want to be like him. Yet, here he was, letting his pride overpower his love for his brother. At that moment, Martha felt a surge of hope. Maybe she had reached him. But then Michael did something that broke her heart. He left, leaving Martha standing in the middle of the room, her dreams of reconciliation shattered. As she stood there, the weight of her family's disunity crushing her, the phone rang. It was David. He wanted to know if Michael had apologized. When Martha told him that his brother was still holding on to his pride, David responded, "Then I won't be apologizing either." And with that, he hung up. Martha sank to the floor, tears streaming down her face. She had failed. The family was divided, and now they were destroying each other. The next morning, Martha called both her sons to the house. They arrived separately, each thinking they would win their mother's support. But Martha had no more illusions. She laid out the terms. If they couldn't put aside their differences, she would disinherit both of them. The brothers looked at each other, surprise flickering across their faces, but neither backed down. And so, the Anderson family stood at the edge of ruin. Two brothers torn between love and pride, two wives locked in battle, and a mother whose tears could no longer heal the wounds. The lesson was clear. When pride speaks louder than love, even the strongest families can fall apart.